So, what is the purpose of this session? I think we've heard a number of themes on some of the roundtables, and certainly my team, when we've been talking to brokers around technology and the things we're building in technology, a recurring theme that keeps coming out is time and pressure and client needs, but also complexity of what is the market. I think Robert mentioned it earlier on. It is getting more complex, the market. We certainly, when we look at, even today, we've got lenders that weren't here this time last year that have been here presenting today. So the market's getting more complex, customer needs are getting more complex. Andy talked about it in his economic update, that when you look at the amount of people that are now self-employed, when you look at the debt cycle, the market is going to get more and more complex. Some of the stats that we talked about on the Mortgage Broker Roundtable today have come from industry surveys with brokers. So it's not our stats, they're widespread industry surveys. And I think one of the stats was 68% of brokers think they're going to be busier in the next 12 months than they have been, which is huge. 72% of customers want to actually move within 8 hours of you recommending a product to you. And as Robert said, we're busier, incomes are going down, so we either have to write more protection or get smarter. What we're hopeful we can do today is talk about the get smarter piece, and a bit that has sort of baffled me since my days at Private Label and GMAC is referrals. I think there's a bit of a stigma with referrals. I think it's something that people look at referrals and talk about client ownership. I have a slightly different view on this, and I've probably sort of killed myself talking about it endlessly to people that I speak in the street and brokers that I speak to. But when we look at things like Money Supermarket and we look at a good BDM, I think a good BDM should make themselves the central point for a broker they're dealing with. So if you think about, if you're a brokerage and you could phone a BDM, not only can that BDM talk to you about their business, but they know the competitors and know the landscape and they become your consultant. I think that in the world we operate now, where client needs are becoming more complex, there's a huge opportunity for you and your firms to become that conduit. There's a huge opportunity for you to be the people that your customers come to, knowing full well that you might not be able to advise on everything, but you actually know where to go. And more importantly, if you have a trusted partner that you can refer people to, where you're not going to lose that customer, but you can still retain a revenue and income from that customer, surely that's where we want to be. And if you're not doing it, someone else will be. I can see some people nodding their heads. So I have a few questions here. I haven't briefed the panel, so apologies. I'm not going to ask these in any particular order, but I think I'm delighted that Paul's joined us. Proper a business that we've been working with for about 15 months. And they're a business that's grown massively. I saw something yesterday where you've just celebrated the first 12-month anniversary of a referral relationship with London & Country.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really interesting if you just sort of explain what that looks like from a viewpoint of the client ownership piece. You've got the largest brokerage in the UK working with prop on referrals. How's that been?
Yeah, it's been a great relationship. Getting it over the line initially, as I'm sure you can imagine, was a bit of a challenge in terms of due diligence and what have you, but we've been supported by the senior management team there that understand the value of having specialists to look after a space in the market that they just don't have the capacity to take on. Anyone that knows LNC know they're just vanilla, but they do serious volume of vanilla residential, but they could see that there was an opportunity that they were missing out on. So it's been great because they've been winning hearts and minds internally of the brokers and the advisors. And then we've done our bit in terms of education and put an account manager in place to manage the relationship so that everyone understands that what we're trying to do is in the best interest of the client. To your point about ownership of the client, it's really easy. We've got a introducer agreement in place, and that specifically details what we can do, what we can't do. And one of the things that our guys have been very good at doing in the first year is actually going back and educating some of the newer advisors at LNC about ways that they can do deals that don't actually end up coming to us. So most of our brokers are experienced in the residential space or in the buy-to-let space, and the deal may come over that the broker thinks doesn't fit within their remit, and we've been able to go back and tell them how they can do it. So we've been trying to actively encourage engagement between both sets of brokers to build a relationship, build trust, so that they know that when they do send something over, we're going to look after it and deal with it in the right way.
Brilliant. And I think that's testament to a good referral model, how it can work.
Yeah.
And David, just coming to you. So again, Fluent's a relationship we've had at Mortgage Brain for many years. For second charges, we have hundreds of referrals a month, and I'd say that you're probably the specialist for us when it comes to that.
So
What would you say from a Fluent viewpoint sets you aside from other people for referrals?
two things really. Size of us. So we're 350 staff. So the biggest complaint I hear from brokers about our competitors is that I sent XYZ a case and 5 days later the client's never been contacted. I'll absolutely guarantee that will not happen with us. If you've got a client that wants to call at 3 o'clock this afternoon, that call will be made. Absolutely. And so the size of us is the biggest thing, without a doubt. And it's a simple referral process with regards to Fluent. So you give us a call or send us an email with the basic scenario of the case. We'll do all the advice and all the compliance bit, which at the moment, I know Neil touched on it, with the complexities that are out there, there are networks now that are frowning upon certain aspects of the industry. We're happy to take on board all that issues for you.
And Martin, I mean, Simply Biz Group is huge. I know there's various things that we can talk about from referrals. Robert mentioned compliance earlier on, but I'm thinking of sort of FIBA and what you do there. What are the benefits that you offer within the group for referrals?
There's quite a few which I'll touch on. Can I ask a different question?
Of course you can.
I'll answer a different.
That's the PR training coming through there.
Cheers, yeah. Who takes business from introducers? If you put your hands up, who does? So most of you take business from introducers, then the question is, why wouldn't you want to be an introducer to somebody else? And I think sometimes it's that psychological bit is, what do you think that you do really well that allows you to take business from an introducer? You just try and mirror that to give it out, would be my key bit. Is it's very different, but yeah, it's then picking the areas that you want to actually be and pass on, because as we said, everything's getting more complex. So do you want to do it because you want to earn more revenue, or do you want to refer things to protect your business? So if you just look at the protect your business bit, Robert talks about, sell more protection. It might not necessarily be that easy because you're busy, so how can you sell more protection? But if you look at consumer duty, every one of your customers should have the same journey. So what is your penetration rates for protection and GI? How often are you actually having that conversation? And be honest with yourself, are you having that conversation with every single client? And if you're not, there's a protection bit that you might need to consider. So therefore, do you go, I've got 20% penetration rate on protection. I'm better off just giving 100% of it to a referral partner, take away that compliance risk because they're going to give the advice, and you probably earn more from it and give yourself more time to do the mortgage. So it's actually understanding what you want to do, I think, within your business, but being honest with yourself of, I can't do it all. And the IFAs went through this probably about 20 years ago, when we used to think, why are you doing referrals? Mortgages are easy, you just do this. It's because they had so many products, so much complexity, they had to find experts to pass it on to. I think we're in that space now with where compliance gone, where the product sets have gone, where criteria has gone, people's work patterns, as we said. Doing just a normal mortgage, what is a vanilla mortgage? We have that debate regular. Specialist lending, what's specialist lending? It means a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think actually looking at your business model and deciding which bits you could refer quite comfortably, but do it consistently and do it 100%.
Just out of interest, does anyone here actually refer business to parlours? Show of hands. So about 25% of people in the room actually refer it. Interesting. And that is a bit of a loaded question because I wanted to sort of come to Emily. So Emily, if you look at the size of OSB Group now, the different products that you surface, how many brokers would you say are active in each of those pots? So, for example, how many brokers have you got that are using you for the residential stuff, the complex, the buy-to-let, and the bridging commercial? And what does that look like?
Well, I'd love to be able to give you specific numbers, and no, I don't know the answer in terms of actual numbers. I think if we look at residential lending, for example, that's clearly where our kind of largest number of brokers are. We have the largest number of active brokers. It's probably around 10,000, I would think, or definitely 10,000 registered. Then as we go into buy-to-let, it dwindles a bit. And then as we go into commercial and bridging and specialist commercial and specialist bridging, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And actually, when you get down to, the commercial and bridging, we do tend to, if you're talking active brokers, you are talking maybe hundreds as opposed to thousands, possibly not even that in the really specialist commercial space. So it kind of just shows you sort of how much the expertise reduces, I suppose, as you go into more specialist lending. But that's not to say that, brokers who dominate in the residential space can't think about commercial lending or can't think about bridging. The reality is if you deal with self-employed clients, then you probably have some commercial mortgage inquiries that you've not yet uncovered. And that is why, working with a referral partner is a fantastic way to go in terms of looking after your customer, as Martin said, but also developing your business and increasing your income. And I kind of get it as well because, I started off my career working with TSB and Northern Rock back in the day and Virgin Money, very, very kind of prime residential lenders. I'd never even heard of a packager, never even heard of a specialist distributor, didn't even know what that was until I then worked for OSB. And that's when you kind of, your eyes are sort of open to everything else you can do within the lending space. And it's so much more interesting as well from my perspective.
And just coming back to Paul, you mentioned the client ownership bit. For me, it feels a little bit like the client will always have the relationship the client wants to have. And it feels like it's a bit of an industry story that keeps coming back around. We had it with BTs. We had it with who owns the customer. In your experience from the referrals that you've been working with, actually, do you find that customers actually want to come back to you, or are customers actually waiting to go back to the broker in the majority of the times?
I would say the majority of the time, we continue to communicate with the referring broker because a lot of the stuff that we're doing will involve that broker. Let's say, for example, we're doing a regulated bridging loan. Client might be buying the property, their exit strategy is going to be a refinance onto a residential mortgage. So we actually need to engage with that broker and have that broker involved in the process. So from the customer's perspective, we've just been introduced to them. We're serving one part of a bigger puzzle, as it were, and the introducing broker is the person that's managing that relationship. So back to your point about the originating broker is the focal point, and then they're just engaging specialists in the same way as you might, engage, a buildings insurance company. I've instructed them to give you a quote for buildings insurance. We're just facilitating part of a bigger loan. Same with secured loans, as David was alluding to. A lot of the people that we're talking to have got maybe a 2-year strategy with that loan to see them through a period, and then they're going to refinance. So we keep the original broker involved in that process, and they retain that ownership.
I think that's picking the right referral partner as well.
Yeah.
And making sure that the terms and conditions that you're signing up to with them are very clear. So we tend to, when we create referral panels for our membership, is we look for specialists in that field who maybe only do that product set. So therefore you don't have that issue of, well, actually, if I send them here for this, they're going to try and sell them X, Y, and Z as well. They're there for a specific reason. We've due diligence them. They're just doing that one product for you, and they pass everything back.
What we found it really helps as well is reporting. So just agreeing on SLAs in terms of how you're going to report, the information you're going to give back. And when the referring brokers can see, what's happening to the loans that are converted, we've got automated processes in place that keep them updated through the process. So anyone will, if you've referred something out, as you were saying, David, where sometimes it will go in and the client hasn't been contacted for 5 days, as an introducer or looking to get introductions, you've got to have automated models to make sure people are kept in the loop. Otherwise, they just lose faith in sending business over.
I think that due diligence bit is vitally important. I mean, it's not the same, but when I look at our technology, when we look at things like AVMs or we look at conveyancers or people we want to refer to or build in, I think it's vitally important for us as a business that they're tried and tested. And HomeTrack's the best example I've got. We could have used and chosen any one of 6 or 7 different AVM providers like other people did, but actually we went for the tried and tested, which might be slightly more expensive, but it stands the test of time. And I think the communication bit is really key. Sorry, Martin, I think you were going to jump in there.
I was going to say due diligence works not just at the start though. So again, you need to make sure that their business models don't change, but that also comes back to your own introducers are introduced to you. How often do you go back and check that they're still doing what they're doing? Have they moved their model? Have they brought new staff in that maybe don't understand what the relationships are? So for me, that due diligence is not just at the time that you create that relationship. It's a regular occurrence just to make sure that you're still getting what you think you're getting. And if you're taking in referrals, you're still getting the type of referrals you want from the type of business you originally signed up to as well.
I think that whilst everyone has been through the pain of having to implement Consumer Duty, that's one of the things that's brought in. One of the things that we look at with all of our introducers is we've got an annual assessment. So we go back to them, talk to them about their business. We look at KPIs over the year. What's the fall-off rate of business that's coming through? What the conversions rate's like? What does your business still look like to make sure that the relationship is still right? You've got to look at fair price and value of anyone that's in your distribution chain on a regular basis. So as you say, just ongoing due diligence. I think the regulator have recognised that that's really important as well.
I think it's the same from a lender perspective as well. Anybody that we work with from a packager distributor perspective, we are doing the same due diligence as well. We're not allowing anybody to do business with us. We're going through looking at conversions, looking at how long it takes a packager or distributor to send us an application. Has it got the documents? We're looking at packaging and things like that. And I think it's worth saying as well, I think the world's moved on as well to how it was, 10, 20 years ago. The people that we work with as lenders are hugely professional, much more so than it ever used to be back in the day. And, you're subject to the same regulation that we are to a degree, the same regulation that you are. It's a very different world we operate in now compared to when packagers first came on the scene, I suppose.
Yeah, I think myself and one of the BDMs, Hayley, were reminiscing about those days earlier on. I do have a question which has come through, so thank you. It is anonymous. Unfortunately, under my network permissions, I'm not allowed to advise on bridge or commercial. How can I still make the most of it with my clients? I think that's probably a common question that comes in. I can see Martin's.
I think it depends on your network, because some networks will then have a set of packages that you have to use, whether that's down to PI purposes or not. We see a lot of that they'll have 3 or 4 packages and go, if you want to do it, you have to refer it. We have seen other businesses who set up, with the permission of the network, set up a separate business with a consumer credit license and will do that business themselves through that separate company. So it then doesn't sit under the PI of the network. But they always do it with the permission of the network, not around the network, I would say.
And just, sorry, I'm just interested here. So if the network isn't allowing the advisor to advise on it, can the network actually stop somebody, in your opinion, I know it's a subjective question, actually referring that to an introducer, because therefore they're not providing the advice?
They're not providing the advice, but I think there sometimes is a bit in the PI that says, well, you've still had that conversation initially, which is why I think the networks would prefer them to go to their due diligenced packager panel. I will caveat that, allegedly, but
It's a subjective question.
It is. The objective answer in that is, yeah, there will be something in the PI, but how?
But there are options available for businesses if that is the scenario, where they can still set up a business with a credit consumer license that will allow them to introduce that business elsewhere.
So they'll do it themselves. So that's how Prop was born, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the founders of Prop run a wealth management and mortgage practice under SJP. SJP did give them the permissions to do bridging, but they gave them permission to set up a separate DA company, which we now run as Prop, and that business still feeds referrals into us as well.
Fantastic. Another great example of what can be achieved. I think I've got another question here, not from the audience, just another question. Is what's the so a question for you, probably David, I'll come to you. What do you think are the sort of areas where products could be referred that are underutilised?
From a Fluent perspective, secured loans and bridging are the two areas that are most underutilised. I think there's still antagonism towards secured loans. There's still brokers who think we're living in the late 90s and Carol Vorderman's advertising Ocean Finance.
Not brokers in this room, I hope.
Not brokers in this room, of course no. Who still think that secureds are a dark product, put it like that, to be avoided at all cost. The reality is the demand is absolutely out there. We've had 2 years of people doing PTs and like-for-like balance transfers and carrying, as the OSB presentation that Andrew did earlier showed you, that the level of personal debt is frightening, with 1 in 6 households having serious financial difficulties. That a secured loan can be a game changer for a client. It can absolutely be a life changer. Again, your referral partner, your choice of, it's picking the right level at the end of the day. I'm not going to blow the trumpet of Fluent. We don't really need to. But the lender help and support that we get in the secured market absolutely differentiates us from all of our competitors, without a doubt.
I think we had a conveyancer on the panel yesterday, which is a slightly different referral model, but it was an interesting debate around the use of technology for referrals. I mean, probably worth just a bit of a plug for what we're trying to achieve. So Mortgage Brain, I have a view and I have a vision working with people like this, that we want to create sort of a community of trusted referral partners, so that actually our users of our technology can actually quite seamlessly take client data, refer it seamlessly. Something we're going to build out with Prop, something we've already got with Fluent, and something we'll work with Simply Biz on for different referral things. I think a point you mentioned earlier on, Paul, is critical. It's the transparency in you as the broker's been able to see everything that's going on. So where do you think technology plays a part in actually streamlining the referral process?
Well, transfer of information is the most obvious one. And then the ability to use that data to automate the reporting. So our referral process, we'll use L&C as the example. They've got a secure contact form. They choose the product line, they put notes in, they tell us who they are. That comes real time into our system and starts the automation process to the client. So text messaging, emails and what have you, but also it then starts that automating process back to that advisor as well. So I think, technology is just really going to enhance the speed at which you can do what you need to do and allow your advisors to focus on building the relationship with the client, while the sort of administrative stuff can be done in the background. No broker wants to sit there with an Excel spreadsheet typing out what they've done with all of the leads for the week and then email that over. You just want to have an automated report that's taking care of that for you. And you can do that with the leads, you can do that with the revenue, you can look at pipeline and expected revenue, so that if you're an introducer and you're putting a lot of business in, you can start to forecast what cash flow you're expecting from that referral partner moving forward as well. So it helps you to sort of plan your business. If you're thinking about increasing marketing spend, that's another area that you can look at. One point I wanted to pick up on in terms of underserved referral areas, something that we identified ourselves is actually specialist buildings insurance. In the bridging space in particular, quite often if someone is doing a renovation on a property, they've got to have specific insurance to cover the fact that that property will be empty for 6-9 months. And a lot of people don't understand that you have to have the right insurance in place. You can't just go and get a standard buildings insurance policy off moneysupermarket.com. And some of the premiums involved of those can be significant. The same with commercial property as well, understanding that you've got the right insurance, because it's not just as simple as, this is the building. You've got to understand what business trades from it, how many people are on site. There's quite a lot of complexities. But there are significant premiums. We've just partnered with a local company that are a specialist, and we're already seeing ancillary revenue coming into our business off the back of that. And I think it's a really underserved area in the market.
Might add to the products as well is for me, it's maybe looking at what the next niche to mainstream is going to be as well. And therefore, will your referral partner help educate you? The example I used is probably 4 years ago. limited company buy-to-let was so niche that people didn't want to do it, and they were passing it across to packages. Now it's mainstream buy-to-let, really, isn't it? Because everything purchased virtually goes through a limited company buy-to-let. So therefore, it's where do you think that next stage is? And it could well be, how does it become a buy-to-let? So it's a bridge or whatever. So is that the next market to start looking at? And it just becomes the next appendix to your business model, but it's part of that chain of your business model. But short term, you might just want some help with recognising how to get the leads out of your back book, what to do. So therefore, you pass it to a referral partner while you get comfortable with it and get them to sort of help and feed that back to you. And most of them will do that because they know that you won't do everyone yourself. Even it'll get to a certain stage that you go, I'm comfortable with a vanilla bridge, but then it becomes a complex bridge or a development, so you still pass it to that person. So it's understanding where you think the market's moving as well.
I completely agree with that, and I think actually vanilla bridging is probably where it will go as a stepping stone. And just back on that Slido question, we are actively talking to networks at the moment about allowing advisors to potentially look at regulated bridging, and I am literally just talking chain breaks, things like that. But as Martin said, it's a good opportunity to kind of dip your toe in the bridging world before you then look at more complex stuff, which is where Prop and Fluent and other packages can help you with.
I've had no more questions on site. Anyone got any questions from me? I've got a couple more, but has anyone got any questions? So one bit that we talk about as a business, and this is probably more of a statement than anything else, is by using a trusted referral partner. Does anyone know what I mean when I say data harvesting? So imagine your client, and I think the specialist insurers is a really good point. If you're not servicing your client for things like that, or just general buildings and contents, they're going on Money Supermarket, or you've been on Money Supermarket yourself, they're asking you questions now like, do you have a mortgage? When's your mortgage up for renewal? What's the outstanding balance? These big businesses are data harvesting, and they want to contact those clients at some point in the future. So actually, the more you can actually retain that client information and control where that client information is passed to with referral partners, I think is actually protecting the big beasts from coming and talking to your customers at some point in the future, which is probably something that we should all be mindful of.
I think you can harvest it back as well, picking up on
Absolutely.
the insurance is, if you've got introducers that may be accountants, if you get a referral from an accountant for a mortgage, if the customer's gone to the accountant for the mortgage, that normally means that they've been somewhere else a few times. So, are you getting all the tricky cases out of the accountants? But if you look at something like commercial insurances, if they're going to an accountant, they'll probably need a commercial insurance of some description. So partner with a commercial insurance referral partner, talk to the accountant, talk to see if you can get those to work together to go through the accountant's client bank, save them money. Therefore, you start getting better referrals because they'll start referring everything to you, not just the tricky cases that somebody's just asked them because they've got nowhere else to go. So it's utilising both ends of that referral process, both into you and out of you, in my view.
And Emily, just as the provider on the panel, what areas are you seeing brokers diversify into? So what areas have you seen more growth in, and what areas are you expecting more growth in?
So over the last, as Martin said, over the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of brokers diversify into limited company lending to the point where it's become not really specialist anymore. Pretty much every buy-to-let lender offers that, but that was a big kind of start of the whole diversification, and when we really started talking about it. Over the last, say, couple of years, as I've said earlier, we are starting to see brokers look at bridging, commercial, specialist bridging, specialist commercial as well. And it isn't, you're not going to walk out of here today and go and suddenly refer to proper huge, precinct of shops or, a heavy development exit bridge or anything like that. But it is about just looking at your existing client bank and making sure you really understand the needs of those customers. And as I said, if you have self-employed clients on your books, potentially 50% of them may be renting their premises, maybe looking to buy their own premises. Well, that's your commercial business there. Anybody that is, thinking of investing in property, the home's under the hammer, let's buy a property, do it up, that's your refurbishment bridge. Anything like that is the start of the diversification. And we've seen a lot of brokers do that. And we are starting to work with a lot more further, like easy bridging, but also working closer with our referral partners, Prop, Fluent, other ones, and really kind of getting into the nitty gritty of bridging and commercial.
I'm conscious of time. So, final question, just for you. If you have one bit of advice for the people sitting here when it comes to referrals, what would that be? Martin, I'm going to come to you first.
Client bank, I think, as Emily says, look at your client bank. This isn't about trying to find something different and then go out and find the customers for it. It is looking at your client bank to see what you're not doing or offering them, or as I said earlier, not offering them on a consistent basis, and then look at who can partner with you to help you service that.
Paul?
So practice that we used to implement with brokers that I've worked with in the past is actually have a grid, and that grid would have the different product lines that you either have a referral partner with or you work in yourself. We used to call it the 8 ball. So you had 8 different product lines. So I'm looking at a residential mortgage, I'm looking at protection, I'm looking at general insurance. Is there a pension to talk about? Is there medical insurance? And then you would tick off and see how many of those you can talk to each of your clients about. And obviously the goal is to get the 8 ball where you've had a discussion and found a product option for each of them. But if you take that sort of metric or matrix approach to every client that you deal with, by being systematic about it, you're going to get more success in those areas that sometimes fall through the cracks when you're really, really busy.
Great bit of advice. Brilliant. David?
I agree with Paul there. You don't need to have all your eggs in one basket. That's absolutely fair. XYZ might be better at bridging. ABC might be better at secured. It's at the end of the day, it's trial and error. But it's finding somebody that you trust at the end of the day. We know for a fact you're as good as your last case, and that's always the situation. We can't win every deal, that's absolutely fact. But we get more and more brokers coming back to us, specifically with secured, because of the level of service that we provide. It's finding somebody in whom you can place your trust, and somebody that will give the same quality of service to your customers that you yourselves do for your customers. That's that important part of a referral process. You want your partner to be an extension of what you do in your business.
And last but not least, Emily?
I agree with everything the guys have said. The only thing I would add to it is potentially have a conversation with your lender BDMs as well, because they'll be working with the referral partners, the packagers, specialist distributors. So whilst they won't advise you on which one to use, they will certainly kind of talk you through the ones that they work with. And then as a follow-up to that, I would say our lender BDMs specifically, because we have those brands, we have commercial, we have bridging, we have residential, and we have buy-to-let. So actually our BDMs are already kind of doing that anyway. So that could be the kind of first step into thinking about branching out into bridging or branching out into a different area of lending. Get in contact with them.
Huge round of applause for the panel. Thank you for the time.